Hi, Phil here with Rio Grande's Jewelry Tech Team. Today I want to talk to you about working with Moissanite. The first thing we're going to do is check over the mounting, see if there's any imperfections that need to be taken care of. In this case, there's some rough edges right on the top rail of the head. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to burnish those out and just make them a little bit shiny. So I've got less imperfection, and that's going to help the stone sparkle just a little bit more once it's set. We also want to make sure that we've got enough clearance for the pavilion of the stone. So I'll go in and clean some of that out with a small ball burr. Then I'll clean the inside of the seat up with a silicone polisher. That'll make it nice and shiny so it helps reflect light up into the stone. Make sure you clean away any debris from the silicone polishers so you can see what you're doing. Now for this type of mounting, I like to use a 90-degree heart burr, especially for moissanite. It has an angle that's almost parallel to the pavilion of the stone. So we can go in, cut our seats. Make sure you leave a little bit of room for the girdle. We don't want to use the shallower heart burrs with moissanite because the angles are going to be wrong, and it'll create kind of a weird pressure on the stone. Even though moissanite is really hard, it's also can be brittle if you push on it wrong because it doesn't have the same kind of grain structure as a diamond does. Make sure you clean out under the, or on the bottom of the seat. And get all that, get that nice and smooth. We don't want to have odd angles in there, and we don't want to have sharp little edges or inconsistencies in the seat, because then the stone isn't going to sit properly, and if there's any bumps or anything in there, when you push down, that can actually snap the edge of the stone. Now moissanite is super hard. It's 9 1/4, and diamond is a 10, so this stone really is going to be a lot harder than most stones. It wears really well, and it's much more brilliant even than a diamond. Now that's almost going to drop in there. So we want to go around, make sure that we've got all our seats level, they're cut evenly, they're consistently deep. You don't want to go more than halfway into the prong. You've left room for the girdle edge, and the bottom of the seat is parallel with the pavilion angle of the stone. So a little bit of work, and then we can check the fit and see how that stone goes in. Looks like it's going to drop right into place, and I think we're good. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to tighten the stone. Now you can use parallel jaw pliers for this. You can use stone setting pliers. I like the parallel jaw. Stone setting pliers are also awesome. but we don't want to push into the stone too far. We want to bring the prongs up over the top of the stone and make sure they're touching the crown. Now you can use regular chain nose pliers for this, or you can also use stone setting pliers. These are really awesome. They're very inexpensive. But it helps tighten those prongs down over the top of the stone. And we just want it down onto the stone. Once the prongs are touching the stone and the stone is tight, stop pushing. Now there's a couple ways to finish these prongs off. You can use something like a small escapement barrette file. This is a number 5, and what I've done is I've gone in and I've kind of polished this edge to give it even more of a safety edge, and I've done that on both sides. But this gets into these really tight prongs really nicely, and so I can shape the inside edge of my prongs, and this makes quick work of it. Keeps these prongs from snagging, and I can even them out if I need to. Also kind of burnishes it down onto the stone. You want to be careful not to run the teeth on the edge of the stone because you can chip it. So you got to watch out for facet junctions and the girdle edge. But that's with any stone that you're going to try and set. Now another way to finish these prongs out is with a cup burr or a concave cutter. This makes very nice round prongs. Brings them right down, shapes them up really nicely. So a lot of times on solitaires I'll use both methods. First I'll use the file, then I'll go in with my cup burrs and finish them off. Finally, what you're going to do is clean up your prongs. You're always safe working with pumice wheels around these because pumice is much softer than the stone, so you don't have to worry about scratching or damaging the stone. Make sure you keep like heatless wheels away from it, because heatless wheels or Mizzy wheels are the same hardness as the stone. So you can actually damage it. Any coarse, super coarse stone can damage it if you hit a girdle edge. So stay off the girdle edges if you can. Pumice is great for finishing up around the prongs. Gives it a nice clean look. If there's any imperfections on the mounting, this is the time to clean it up. Make it perfect. Most silicone polishers are safe around the Moissanite. You want to clean up any tool marks that you left on the prongs. Clean up the prongs, make sure everything is square, everything is level. This is the time to do it. Don't use any diamond wheels. No diamond wheels whatsoever around these stones. And clean up, double check everything. Make sure you've got all your tool marks out. Make sure this is ready to go. Now, as far as polishing, you can do all your polishing when you're ready. But we've got one more step on this one. This particular customer needs the ring to be sized. So we'll do that next. The next thing I do is I'll take my ring and since I've made a cut already, now I'm going to take a piece of solder, and this is a little trick I do. I will open the gap just a little bit, slip the piece of solder in, make sure everything's lined up, got my solder in. Now I'm ready to go ahead and solder. I'll swish it around in my boric acid and alcohol. I'll burn that off. Next, I'll dip the joint in my flux. I'm using Mighty Flux for this. Now with the piece of solder in the joint, I can go in, heat it up, and I know for a fact that that solder is going to flow through the joint. Can't help but flow through the joint, and I get a perfect solder. Now, when you're working with moissanite, you can go in and apply heat. It's not a problem to apply heat. You can even re-tip up to 18 karat white. It turns a weird color when you apply heat to it, but your color comes back, so that's not a problem. The big thing is don't quench. We don't want to shatter the stone, so let it cool naturally. Now we're going to file out the little bit of solder that's in the joint. Then we take a silicone polisher, clean that up. Once we get the inside sanded out, we're going to hit the outside edge. Going to make that nice and uniform. So hit that a couple times with the file. And I'll show you what else, or another thing that I do. Remember that pin that I've got on the side of my bench pin? Okay, I use that to help steady my ring. So I can flip that. You can see I've got a little spot that I file against, so I can keep everything uniform and I can get that perfect curve. Now go back to my sandpaper, couple strokes, sand the edge, make sure everything's uniform, and we're ready to polish. And also take a look, that color came back real nice. That stone looks pretty good. Finally, what I'm going to do is give this ring a polish. Now I wrap my rings in a little piece of leather, just enough to hold it. So we're going to have a little noise from the buffer and from the exhaust. That's polished on the inside. Go around, really bear down. What this does is it kind of burnishes and polishes at the same time. Now we're going to give it its final polish on the inside. And look at that polish. That's the Merard orange. Cleans up very easy, and that polish is absolutely flawless on the inside. Finally, we're going to give it our pre-polish. Again, we're going to use the Merard pink. Makes quick work of any scratches that might have been on there. Also polish around the head since we did stone setting. Don't have to worry about any of these polishing compounds damaging the stone, rounding facets on moissanite. This is looking pretty good so far. You can see that Merard pink makes quick work of any polishing marks, any scratches that you might have in there. And I went from a 220 grit sandpaper to this kind of polish. My final polish is going to be with a very soft, fluffy buff. Again with the orange compound. You notice how little I used. I just barely touched it. That's enough, and that's going to give me just a spectacular polish. So these Merard compounds are very clean. It's a lot safer to use. They clean up with water easier, and they give a better polish faster. So that ring is ready to go. So we've got the ring finished up, and it looks fantastic. It has almost a D color, which is really unusual for a diamond simulant. This is environmentally friendly. It's made in a lab. It's way less than lab-created diamonds, and it looks better. Thanks for watching. If you have any more questions, please contact us.